I'm admitting everyone now. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to host this event today. And please allow me to introduce our guest speakers. I think you'll agree with me that we have a broad array of expertise today, and I can't wait to hear what our guests are going to share about their experience and about their thoughts dealing with the latest published generative AI, which is called ChatGPT. But I'm hoping that we're also going to touch on other types of generative AI today, because ChatGPT just happens to be one that was made available to the public, and that's why we're hearing so much more about it. So please allow me to first introduce Yamina Hakem. Yamina is CEO and founder of Global Reach BI, a strategic intelligence consulting firm dedicated to the pharmaceutical industry in the US and Europe. She has been at the heart of the information world all her career, spending over 20 years at Thomson Reuters, and partnered with pharmaceutical companies globally, facilitating their development strategies. With Global Reach BI, she is now expanding her mission to support new patient treatments and launching new drugs in a safer and faster way by integrating new technology. The scientific, clinical, and commercial intelligence to make this happen is getting so vast that we need technology, and specifically AI technology, to make sense of it. After taking AI classes at Stanford, her company has developed the Spring platform to consolidate and retrieve validated intelligence. Let's see how ChatGPT can be part of this mission to bring safer drugs to the market. We're hoping to hear more about that today. And now, please allow me to introduce Dr. Harvey Castro. He's a physician, healthcare consultant, a serial entrepreneur with extensive experience in the healthcare industry, who aims to increase awareness of digital health and implement positive changes in the field. He previously held various positions throughout his professional career, including CEO, physician, and medical correspondent. He has a strong track record of success and is known for his innovative thinking, having developed multiple healthcare apps and served as medical correspondent for major media outlets. In addition, he is an author of numerous medical publications. Most recently, though, he published the most important one, a book on ChatGPT healthcare. And that was right when all the social media started to talk about ChatGPT. So Dr. Harvey, again, huge congratulations on the timing. You could have not gotten that one better. That book is now available via Amazon, so we encourage our audience to check it out. In that book, he's sharing his insight and experiences in the healthcare industry and offers guidance for those looking to succeed in this field. And now, please allow me to introduce Dr. Wendy Charles. She has been involved in clinical trials from every perspective for 30 years, with a strong background in operations and regulatory compliance. She currently serves as Chief Scientific Officer for BurstIQ, a software technology company specializing in blockchain and AI. She is also an adjunct faculty member at the University of Colorado, Denver, and the University of Denver, where she teaches health information technology. Dr. Charles obtained her PhD in clinical science with a specialty in health information technology from the University of Colorado, Anschutz Medical Campus. She is certified as an IRB professional, clinical research professional, and blockchain professional. So now, welcome again, and welcome to all our audience. We're excited to have you with us today. I can't wait to hear the broad perspectives from our audience. We're gonna, not only from our panels, but if you can share your thoughts in the chat and post questions. I'm going to curate those questions and make sure that we leave time for Q&A at the end. So please feel free to send them to us in the chat. Before we start, I just wanted to make sure that our audience is aware that we're going to touch on all generative AI today and specifically highlight what is unique to ChatGPT. As all of you are likely aware, there are numerous types of generative AIs and numerous types of GPTs. And we're going to just briefly highlight today what other types might be there and how some of the opportunities and challenges that we're going to address today reflect the same or any difference with the other types of generative AIs or GPTs. So let's kick off the first round. And let me ask Dr. Castro first. What do you think is the current sentiment and the State of the Union. And how did people react when they heard about your book being already ready off the shelf when everybody else had just barely heard about GPTs and ChatGPT specifically?
What's interesting is everywhere I go, I usually just ask whoever I meet in the street, restaurants, I ask them, hey, have you heard of ChatGPT, just to get a feel. And then on the physician side, I ask all my colleagues and friends, and believe it or not, most of them have heard it either from me or had recently just heard about it from a friend. And so the State of the Union right now, it seems like it's booming. You know, when you look at the numbers, there's the last report was over 100 million people have used it since late November. And what's interesting, I did the math, that's a little over 1% of the entire planet. So even though that sounds like a big number, it really isn't. It's still a low number. This technology, the minute I saw it, I got so excited because I thought this is, in my opinion, the next wave in healthcare.
Absolutely. And although you said, yes, percentage-wise, it's still not such a big number, but it's quite robust, and it's more than any other technology has been able to have users in the history of mankind since we've been recording. Yes. So it's astonishing.
Yes.
And Yamina, you are in an industry where information is everything, where valid information is crucial, and where the success of companies in pharma hinges on having the most accurate, most timely information. Can you share what the sentiment is? What are you hearing? What is it considered? An ally, an enemy? What is your sentiment, and what do you hear from your colleagues?
Most certainly, it has generated a lot of interest. And as much, and you're right in saying that we're going to touch on different GPTs. And the one that is of interest to us is the bio-GPT more specifically. But I'm going to bounce off the comment from Harvey as to why is there such a big kick on this ChatGPT, because we have to start with the beginning. Okay, what is ChatGPT? What is a GPT? The huge success of it is very much in its ability to generate content on its own. So really, preparing for this discussion, I thought, okay, what does GPT stand for? So the GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Basically, it is a model that has been built with some data input, and we are going to talk about that, some data input to basically provide a summary, to generate a text without any human supervision. So that's what is making it so different from doing the searching on the internet and having the link to the different sources, and then you making that conclusion and drawing that the outcome of that analysis. Here, instead of you doing it, it's doing it for you, and that is just amazing. So when you see the amount of science and data that is currently available in the clinics, I mean, we can certainly use that technology to analyze different aspects, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in a minute.
And thank you for that high level. And as we'll highlight a little bit later, of course, there is human oversight in the training, and that's very important. And then a lot of human oversight with the outputs, but the process, of course, is different. So we want to make sure our audience is aware of that. And Wendy, you are in a highly regulated environment. You are dealing with a lot of colleagues that are concerned also about regulatory guidelines. What will be approved? Also, you're an author, an educator. Maybe give us a little bit of flavor of in each of these ecosystems. Sure. What's the sentiment?
Yeah, and thank you for including me here today. So with many new, with the introduction of many new technologies, they tend to follow the Gartner hype cycle. And we are definitely seeing the hype cycle with these ChatGPT and other GPT technologies. We're seeing hype both with projections about what the technology will be able to achieve in the future, but we're also seeing hype about fears. And what are the fears that in the what the GPTs will actually be able to do. For example, for both of the universities where I teach, they've had faculty meetings thus far about what are the concerns about students using ChatGPT for their writing. For an editorial board where I serve for a journal, there's been discussions about how will ChatGPT change the writing landscape, and will it reduce the academic rigor in writing? So with both of those regards, there's a lot of fear. In reality, I do think we're also going to hit the trough of disillusionment in the future, where we realize that these technologies can't achieve the projections quite as easily as people had hoped that they would. And eventually we'll get to a plateau where we have realistic understanding and expectations about how they can achieve more of the projected goals realistically. When it comes to regulations, I will be talking about that later, but many people don't realize that if a product is intended to serve a medical function, it can be regulated by the FDA as software as a medical device. So I will be, as we talk about some of the challenges, I will be going through that to make sure that our audience is informed about when this generative technology could be classified as software as a medical device, and what are some of the concerns and awareness that organizations that would like to use GPTs should be aware of.
Thank you. And maybe I'll add, just to round it up, I've had a lot of inquiries about digital ethics perspectives on ChatGPT, and of course IP rights, authorship rights, but also how to mindfully deploy this around the world. And then of course questions also regarding inclusion. I hadn't initially right away thought about it from an inclusion perspective, but this can be a life-saving tool for many people around the world that otherwise would never have access to the vast amount of information that we might have sometimes. And also the last one that I wanted to highlight, maybe for our consideration, is some people reached out and asked me about cybersecurity aspects that we might have to think about. And also, if this can in some way accelerate our efforts for attaining the United Nations SDGs and net zero, how can this help all the scientific efforts that are currently going on to leverage those and maybe help those organizations worldwide that are having a variety of initiatives in that era. So I think together we touched on a lot of these ecosystems. The one we haven't touched on is marketing, but I think we'll leave that for another session. But I think it's really interesting. And later on tonight, I'm going to actually give a talk on the legal aspect. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. So now I would love to hear from all of you, what are the biggest challenges that you see, and then how would you address them? Let's start with Dr. Castro. Obviously, you wrote a book about it. So first, maybe you share also with the audience what drove you to write a book, and then what challenges have you encountered and how would you address them, so that our audience can hear it from you that has been dealing with it and has been immersed in this for so long.
Yeah. It all came from, believe it or not, when the first iPhone came out. When it first came out, I realized this is going to be something different. And back then I created the first IV medication app, and I basically ended up creating about 30 healthcare applications. Many of my applications at the beginning got rejected by Apple, saying that it may require FDA approval or it was too progressive. I look at those apps today and all of them didn't need FDA approval today. And so the reason I like sharing that story is because it leads me into why I wrote the book. When I saw ChatGPT, I fell in love with it, and I thought, man, this is going to be such a great tool for our patients, for our physicians, our healthcare providers. But I thought we need healthcare leaders to lead it, and we can't allow businessmen to lead it, because if not, it's going to have a different angle to ChatGPT and healthcare. And so what I did was just literally write the book, because I wanted to promote just this idea of having healthcare and AI together and bring it to the next level. And so just real quickly, I look at this as three entities. I look at it as before you see a patient, when you see a patient, and then after you see a patient. The easiest one is the education. So before and after seeing the patient. So before, I could see the world where a patient puts in, hey, I have diabetes. I'm going to go see the doctor. I need excellent questions and follow-up questions. So ChatGPT can generate those questions today, give them to the doctor, and the doctor can review them. On the back end, On the educational piece, I feel like it's going to need the physician's blessing or a healthcare leader because of this whole, one of the limitations is this whole hallucination effect. And so with the hallucination basically is, I like giving this particular example. I'm an ER board certified physician, and I can look at anything that ChatGPT will produce in the emergency medicine field, and I know if that is bogus or if that's not. And so
Please be so kind to mute yourself if you're having a, thank you.
Let's move on with the ceiling.
yeah, thank you,
Right.
Manu. If you could mute.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you. And so, what was I saying? Anyway, so, sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought.
The
Sorry.
board certification.
Oh
the
yeah,
board
so
certification.
as board certified doctor, I can look at ER, know that it's some data that's coming out of ChatGPT and know that that is accurate. But if ChatGPT produces something on a pediatric cardiology and goes over a procedure, I may look at it and say, yeah, that looks good to me. But then a pediatric cardiologist look at it, be like, dude, this is so wrong. And so my limitation on this technology is, again, it's a beta and it has this hallucination effect.
Absolutely. And data validation will come up, I'm sure, in our conversation in a second. Thank you. So Yamina,
Yeah.
in your field as well, people produce a lot of data. There is a massive amount of data available. It's almost impossible for someone to ever even aim to read everything that has been published in the pharma industry. So how has this impacted your role and your company, and maybe how are your colleagues perceiving the main challenges?
Yeah, so I mean, again, in strategic intelligence, when you are going to make a decision on the future of a clinical trial or future investments, you need the right intelligence, you need the right, and you start with the right data. And data is really, really paramount. The current limitations that I see with the current ChatGPT system is that it's based up to the 2021. So obviously this is going to change, but you need also to have the most current information. The next thing is that any system, any model will be as good as the model that it's going to be trained on. So obviously, and we have done a lot of work here at Global Reach BI in terms of predicting clinical trial success, predicting duration. And here, again, it's not just the quality of data, but it's also the availability. So when you have your clinical trials on breast cancer, for example, you are going to have a lot more to use information than in, for example, rare diseases, because there's not a lot of information. So really, the data is key. The process to extract this data, validate the key parameters is obviously really, really important. But all in all, you need to bring, I mean, even if you have the right data, that you have the right processes, you have to give it the context, and that can only be done by a human being who is going to look at the current company strategy or the current company plans and compare it to the potential that we have analyzed with the ChatGPT. But we were saying that ChatGPT is one of the models, and it is one of the most advanced. There is, and I'm going to give this example to show the importance of right information, is that last week, Google CEO presented BARD, and there was a question that was asked about a telescope. The demo went not as anticipated. The information that they got out was wrong. The answer was wrong. This caused to actually have Google lose like $100 million in stock. That was just totally unbelievable. So that's the impact of the wrong data and giving the wrong answer. Here in this case, it's financial, but potentially we always have to be mindful of what any model is going to give us in terms of answers, because we are dealing with the life of patients. So we do have to be even more cautious of where we are going and what we are doing.
So both of you have already highlighted the need for accurate human oversight, and I would like to hear from Wendy what you see the challenge being, not only in clinical trials, but also in the education ecosystem, and maybe in the way we can approve devices. Go ahead.
And thank you. So there are a number of scientific and ethical considerations, and I'm just going to build on some of the things that my colleagues have spoken about already. Well, one important regulatory consideration is that GPTs, such as ChatGPT, are not private, and they actually use the input information to help them further develop their algorithms. So we can't input patient information yet to the publicly available GPTs. And in the future, I do believe the GPTs will be included in more private technologies, but we can't yet use an open platform that advertises that it's continuing to use your information to build its algorithms, and we can't sacrifice that privacy. And similarly to some of the things that Yamina was talking about, while it can be very helpful for company projections, anything you enter is not private. And so we should be conscientious about intellectual property. You know, there was an interesting article in the Wall Street Journal last week about AI, and it said, in order for AI to work, we need to trust it. So it's really important to consider, you know, as we have this conversation about GPTs, whether we can trust GPTs or whether we should. And as Yamina pointed out, you know, GPTs are dependent on the quality of data that they're trained on, and they have, if there's not complete or accurate data, the outcomes will also be inaccurate, as well as the ethical implications that Ingrid pointed out, that we already know that some AI algorithms are biased because they weren't trained on a sufficiently broad population that was representative of all of the populations it is intended to serve. Now, when we think about how AI algorithms could theoretically cause harm, that is why AI algorithms can be regulated as standalone software as a medical device. Now, the FDA and the IMDRF have particular criteria that they use to determine whether AI or software in general could constitute software as a medical device. And while there's a lot of different criteria, the highlights are that the software or product would treat, diagnose, cure, mitigate, or prevent disease. And the FDA posts updates on their website periodically about new approvals. And when I say approvals, most of them are cleared going through the 510(k) pathway for medical devices. But even as as of today, I looked, there are hundreds of standalone AI algorithms that are approved as a medical device. And most recently in October, the FDA did another huge batch upload, and there was 178 more. So it is important to know that AI-based tools can be regulated because they can cause harm and they have an important role. And for my role in scientific publications and literature, there have been a lot of speculations about what ChatGPT could do. And there are questions about whether GPT-generated context would constitute some form of scientific misconduct if an individual relied on that instead of their own writing. So there are questions about, should we be screening for that in our school systems? Zero GPT is now being used to try to detect whether someone has been using a GPT in order to help them augment their writing. And there are cautions about whether it could enhance some of our academic writing as well. For example, there's a lot of speculation and hype as to whether GPTs are going to take over systematic reviews. So as a personal anecdote, I am conducting a systematic review right now. And even though I love GPTs, I use them every day. I can assure you that GPTs do not yet have the basis for being able to conduct this. Not only do they lack the domain-specific knowledge, as Yamina was talking about, but they cannot yet understand the specific context and nuances of context that a human would need in order to interpret the information correctly and be able to understand and synthesize different themes. So I am very hopeful about GPTs, but I'm also cautious because these can, they're not going to complete as much as we had hoped. And I do believe that we're going to have a lot of rigor together as a scientific community to make sure that they're undergoing the appropriate review pathway as well.
Thank you. So now that we highlighted a few of the challenges, let's do a round of discussion on what are the beautiful opportunities if we have the right guardrails, if we continue to enhance the algorithm. As we know, there are already different generations, and as all of us continue to input data, they will get better and better. There are already others that have not been made public who are better. So that's another element that we need to discuss. This one happens to be one that was made available to the public for free, but there are many other opportunities for products that will be commercialized that will be highly trained and more sophisticated. So let's talk a little bit, Dr. Castro, in your most wild dreams about ChatGPT, what would you like to do with it?
I see a lot of, and I love that you guys are mentioning other GPTs, because obviously the only one we know of, or a lot of people know of, is the one that we get to play with. There's other out there that are private and they've been working on, they just haven't released it. And so in the ideal world, I personally in love with something called BioGPT, which is basically a lot of the issues that we're talking about. It fixes a lot of them in the sense that these algorithms are just coming from data that is secured by PubMed or other medical sources that are reliable or stuff that we use. So in the ideal world, I think this would be the tool. Now on the HIPAA side and HIPAA compliance, there's different ways, and I'm not an IT guy, but there's ways of doing it. And I think having a smaller database, it's going to allow, in the ideal world, for this to sit behind a server, let's say at your local hospital system. That's
wonderful. Thank you. I can confess, in my wild ChatGPT dreams, I would like it trained on patents. That was the first thing I entered because I have to read a lot of patents or review patents, but it answered me, sorry, I wasn't trained on patent data. So that was a great way to see that. But definitely there are many more. So Yamina, what would you use ChatGPT in an ideal world with human oversight, with all the guardrails? Where would it help your industry the most, and where could it have the biggest impact on patient outcomes?
Definitely. So the BioGPT is a very good start. It has been trained on 15 million records on PubMed, Medline. So that's a beginning. I mean, knowing that like 2 years ago, it had Medline records of 500,000. So there's improvement. And it's going to be better, but where I see it and where I'm starting thinking is that over the last 4 years, we have developed our own internal Spring platform for our clients. And basically here you just have validated data, KOL intelligence, out of conferences information, clinical, commercial information. So here the data is really clean. And the dream that I have is that I take the API from the ChatGPT, integrate it within Spring so that I can use the technology and the model that they have built on our clean and specific data that we have for our clients. Because here again, it's a consolidation of information on a very specific topic. And you do a search, you're going to understand everything about a certain drug from a certain company, great. But you have to then make sense out of it. If you can extract this information and analyze it further, it's going to analyze it further for you. you've got another step in the process that is facilitated. So I really want to implement that in there. That's, yeah, and we are in the list to test the API onto Spring. That's the next step for 2023. So it is my wish, and this is where I see it, because I see it as a huge enabler, facilitator, and it's not a replacement of any of our analysts of consultants' time at all. It's going to help us along the way in our analysis, and we can go then into the more deep dive, what's in it, the implications for the clients. That's where we bring the value to our client. So that's where I hope I can make a difference in 2023.
Thank you. And then Wendy, where would you take ChatGPT?
Oh, there's so many different ideas, and I really appreciate the passion of the colleagues on the panel. For my wish list, these factors are already available, but I believe that GPTs will make them much more efficient and much more affordable to organizations to utilize them. So, for example, I am really excited about the opportunities for clinical decision support. And there are GPTs that are already being used for that, and I think it'll become more broadly available. There's a company I'm excited about that's called Symptomate that uses GPTs to help with diagnoses. It is regulated as a medical device in the European Union, but not in the United States. And it provides really sophisticated analyses and continues to train and learn on different diagnostic strategies. Along those lines, I'm really hopeful about opportunities for personalized medicine to be able to customize treatments more efficiently and effectively for individuals. Along the lines for clinical trials, I believe it's going to enable us using deeper analytics more efficiently and effectively to simulate molecular interactions and demonstrate more effective digital endpoints. And I am hopeful too, after having been an IRB manager for 8 years at 2 different academic medical centers, I really put research participants at the center and at the heart of my vision too. And I am hopeful that we can use this technology to create a better experience for those individuals who volunteer to participate in clinical trials, and that we can use the GPTs to create more interactive tools such as chatbots that can interact with them to remind them. We already have push messaging, but how about something more engaging and interacting to keep them excited about their participation, to let them know that they're valued, to help them find information about their upcoming visits, to remind them to enter in their EPRO or how to find a ride to their clinical visit. And I sincerely hope too that this technology can help us identify those individuals that are most that would benefit from participation, but are often historically excluded, as well as helping individuals find the right studies at the right time, and even reducing the risk that individuals could drop out. So those are some of my wish lists, and I really hope that we can use GPTs to further medicine and clinical research in this manner.
Absolutely, and I can echo a few of those thoughts. When you mentioned IRB, I got reminded about my days when I had to write a lot of policies. So I tried ChatGPT. It can write a really good baseline policy, like just a template. It's really solid. Now, of course, it has to be customized. Of course, it has to have any other elements added for each organization, but it did pretty well on a just basic template structure. So you could say it accelerates the process very much for those that have to write policies day in, day out. I can encourage people to try it out. And then I think precision medicine, all 3 of you somehow are related to precision medicine and personalized medicine. So when we think about finding rare diseases, maybe Dr. Castro, you want to give an example if you've had any that you can share, or drug development, right?
Actually, I love this story, actually, and we didn't plant this. This literally just came up. I had a colleague that's he is a pediatric surgeon, and he was telling me how there was only 20 cases of this particular disease, and that he was just excited that he was able to identify this person and diagnose the child appropriately. And so for kicks, he went ahead and presented the case to ChatGPT, entered the symptoms, the radiology findings, obviously didn't violate HIPAA because didn't put any identifiers or anything like that, didn't do this at work either. And ChatGPT actually came up with the diagnosis. And so my point is as follows, being an ER board certified doctor, seeing patients, as much as I want to say I'm good at everything, there's stuff that I don't know. And so I study everything, and there's some rare diseases that literally there may only be 20 cases and it could miss. And so what I'm saying with this technology or BioGPT, I can see a future where a doctor is stumped, doesn't know, and then, it's the second, third opinion now and can go into ChatGPT or one of these GPT equivalents and give a diagnosis for a rare disease, or at least a differential diagnosis to help the doctor get to that diagnosis. So I think it's exciting.
Absolutely. Or genomics, right? Genomics data is so broad and the denominators are so varied. So when we think about the vast amount of data that need to be processed, not one single human can ever read all the genomics reports available worldwide. So, and that sounds great. Now, Wendy, from an FDA perspective, if I would challenge you and say, if tomorrow you need to find a way to use ChatGPT to help the FDA team do their job faster, how would you do it?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, so I have had the pleasure of interacting with individuals in leadership from the FDA. I can't say I have like a super close connection, so I don't want to overstate that, but I've been really encouraged about how at the leadership level they are embracing newer technologies. I had the chance to teach them about blockchain and to learn how blockchain is now being integrated in studies that are submitted for a new drug application. And the FDA has put out a data modernization plan and a technology modernization action plan where they are actively pursuing new technologies to create more efficiency within their review process, their review timelines, as well as finding strategies to utilize the data submitted for some of these applications in a new and more effective manner. So I think that there's a good climate. It does take a while for any government agency to move forward in a slightly different direction and to evaluate new technologies that are available. But I'm very hopeful that there won't be flat resistance, likely that individuals will be more receptive to opportunities that can help them meet the action plans that have been set forth.
Thank you. And then Yamina, I'm going to challenge you to, if I would say tomorrow, I would like you to draft a strategy that includes ChatGPT to help me with my product launch. I'm having a new drug that I want to launch in a new market, let's say in Asia. How would you, and I say you have to use ChatGPT, how would you design that plan for me?
That's a very good question and a complex one. But again, I would start with a really good amount of data to make it happen, and use any previous case studies that have been implemented for a market launch in Asia, and learn from them using the ChatGPT and extract what were the important elements so that we can then draft for you the most impressive one. And as much as drafting a strategy, I mean, it is cumbersome, but at the same time, I mean, drafting a marketing plan, drafting a marketing, just a paper is difficult. But here, it is already feasible. And I have to say that I'm starting now to draft marketing articles for Global Reach BI using ChatGPT. And one of the limitations of the platform is the number of people who can have access to it. So it's not just the data content, but it's also the number of the people. So sometimes in the middle of the day, it can say, well, you can't get in. So now my strategy is to basically get in first thing in the morning and I don't switch off. I'm there.
So we can envision a segmentation in the future of ChatGPT by industry, by topics, and train it on data that we would like, such as a federated learning model sometimes.
Yeah.
We could think about that too. Great, sounds good. Now, the last round, I know we have also a few questions from our audience that I received. So let's think about where is it going to evolve. Let's talk future. We talk challenges, we talk current deployment with its limitations, but let's think about the future, and maybe we can touch also on converging technologies. So Dr. Castro, like you mentioned, you've been a pioneer in deploying a lot of technologies early on in healthcare. If you could just, in an imaginary world, think about next 2-3 years, where do you think GPTs in general will evolve, and how will they fit into the rest of the converging technology ecosystem?
I think it's here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. The only thing that I can see delaying this is, unfortunately, if we have a bad outcome, meaning a patient may self-diagnose and maybe another country can go to the pharmacy and get the medicine, and erroneously think they have a certain disease because ChatGPT said it. But where do I see this? I see it integrating into all our healthcare systems, EMRs, patient information, websites, decision tools. And I don't see that going away. Now, obviously, it may not be ChatGPT per se, but it'll be some derivative. What I tell my colleagues is, you don't need a machine gun to go to a fight. You may just need your hands. So the same thing with this. If you're a center in diabetes and you're just working on diabetes, you don't need all of ChatGPT or all of BioGPT. You may just need a smaller version of it. And so that's where I think we're headed. And I see those things coming actually this year.
Absolutely. And we just gave the perspective of highly sophisticated professionals that are used to deal with the highest rigor. But imagine when we compare patients that now type in something in Google and just try to find their way, that's much more risky what they're doing now, right? So we can't compare ChatGPT always with a double-boarded physician. We have to think about what are patients doing now, and what are patients also, like you mentioned, doing in other countries where they don't have the chance to see a doctor or an emergency room available. So for them, it might be actually quite helpful to have access to all this wealth of information. Great. And then let's think about clinical trials. How can we, I know, Wendy, you have to also drop, how would you deploy if you had to combine blockchain and GPT evolve, next generation? What could you come up with? How could it change the landscape?
Yeah, so I would hope that if we could combine it with blockchain, that we would enable many features of data connectivity, individual Web3 type access controls and visibility. And as GPTs evolve, I expect that we're going to see much more domain-specific information be added over time. Right now, they had scraped the internet up to, 2021? Like when I've done searches on ChatGPT, it's not always accurate because there's newer information available that it doesn't include. But I really do believe that as we specialize many of these GPTs for specific industries, that we will have much more domain-specific information that will inform us more accurately. What I also hope is that for those in the audience that are interested in developing GPTs, that you take a very close look at the ethics of the individuals you're trying to help, and make sure that you include sufficiently representative populations, especially for those globally who may not have access to a lot of medical information or clinical research opportunities, so that we can develop those algorithms to better include them and to better create, to better inform our predictive analytics about how we can best treat them as well. So I also do believe that more and more research is going to involve simulations, instead of having to conduct quite as much research on animals and individuals moving forward. So, and I think that these AI algorithms will enable us to create much better predictions about how molecular compounds will actually work in a human body, as opposed to as much testing as we've had to do on, again, living organisms.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. And we understand if you have to drop, we
Okay,
appreciate
thanks.
your insights and your expertise. It's been a pleasure to hear as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Yamina, what would you think about the future of clinical trials and maybe also synthetic data and using other technologies? How would you combine GPTs in general?
to add to Wendy's comment, yes, in terms of the having digital twins, instead of having animal testing and building digital twins, it's this analysis of not just text, but pictures, videos, this kind of data sources. I'm sure it's totally feasible now, but again, you need to actually pre-train it and make sure that it's robust. I'm sure that, Harvey was saying that it's a technology that is here to stay. For sure, when you've got Microsoft investing $10 billion, they're not doing that for nothing. So I'm sure that they're getting some really nice development sorted. And one of them is the analysis of pictures and, most importantly, videos, so that we can do better analysis, better prediction, and extend the array of data that we can use and start from as a basis.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate all your insights. We have one question from the audience. If you would give your vote on what's going to happen with the education ecosystem, and it's related to healthcare and life sciences as well. So from an education perspective of the next generation in healthcare and life sciences, maybe you can quickly, Wendy, just real quick, do you think it will stay? Will it be approved, or will it be forbidden? And then we'll go.
Yes. So universities are trying a number of different approaches right now. Some universities have created a block within their firewall from preventing individuals accessing their systems to be able to connect to ChatGPT. I do think it's here to stay. I think that there are many students are very creative about how they can access forbidden sites, and that there are so many GPTs that will be out there. So then how do we incorporate that in education, and how do we still ensure good knowledge acquisition and good testing? So for the universities where I teach, they are encouraging teachers to take more of the content, educational content, and use it in discussions and have handwritten tests. So in class, so that students cannot necessarily access those technologies during the actual testing. It's fine to use them during the learning process if it helps students understand a concept more clearly, but then when testing, have them do more handwritten activities. There has also been talk about for papers, how do we create an opportunity for students to benefit from the increased knowledge, but still demonstrate their own academic effort? And in that regard, it's about using ChatGPT or other GPTs for idea formation, for hypothesis generation, but then create assignments that students wouldn't be able to conduct using a GPT that relates to a very personal concept or a unique professional idea, where they'd have to build on ideas that they may have acquired from some of this technology, but then had to communicate it in their own way. So I think most of us have accepted the prospect that it's here to stay. And instead, how can we utilize this as part of our education and our learning experience instead of forbidding it?
Thank you. Yamina, your thoughts for education? Will it stay? Will it be forbidden? Will it be allowed as a tool?
It should be allowed as a tool. I mean, it should be allowed as a tool. And as Wendy was saying, yes, it can be used to in the learning, in building some hypothesis generation. But then where the value of the student is going to come in, it's to explain the reasoning behind that. Because if you can explain why you come to select that hypothesis as the most probable outcome, then it means that you've got the full understanding of what happened before that. So we need to have this as a tool, as a learning tool. It can certainly help in being clear, in being very focused, and providing some elements, but then the thinking and the reasoning is the human intelligence is where the student is going to be tested on.
Thank you.
And that's the same for us as a consultant. That's what that's how I see it as a tool, because we're going to actually be able to try and make sense from all this data once it's pre-trained correctly, we are sure of the data, but then you need that human intelligence to actually make sense out of it based on our client strategy. So the next steps needs to still be happening for us, but it's a basic tool to start with.
Thank you. Dr. Castro, last opinion, and then we have to close because I know all of us have other events and I want to make sure I'm mindful of our audience's schedule as well.
Yes. Honestly, I see the following. Number one, we cannot forbid it. We have to embrace it.
Exactly.
Number two, we need to stop changing. We need to change the way we think of traditional medicine or traditional education and embrace this and test our students differently. So I totally agree. Maybe we don't send papers to be done at home where they can cheat, but they do it in front of us. Or if they do use ChatGPT, which I'm totally fine with, then they need to demonstrate what they learned from it and then test them in class. Moving forward, and I'm going to just leave this with this thought, will we have degrees? Will we need a degree? Or will the future hold no colleges? Will colleges go bankrupt because now the knowledge is out there? And, you know, personally, I would rather hire someone that is proficient at a certain task or what I need them to do for me versus have some degree and I really don't know. So I'll leave it with that.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. To sum it up, I recently put a post and the votes from the audience were similar to your insights. 68% out of the audience stated that it will stay and it will be incorporated. It will be a hybrid curriculum blended where it's used by teachers and students alike. Only 6% said it should be forbidden for students. 13% said it should be forbidden for teachers. So I think that kind of reflects your opinions as well. Thank you all. I really enjoyed our conversation and I hope our audience as well. And we're gonna have one next week on ethics and human rights. So I encourage everyone to tune into that one as well. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Take care.